Welcome to the show, Brain Health Unchaining Your Pain, and I'm really excited to have fabulous guest Tom Ruwitch on the show today. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Thank you so much, Ruth.
So Tom and I met through a networking event and really got chatting there. And for those that don't know Tom, he coaches consultants and other experts. Hire Tom to power up their stories because most dish out the same blah 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 content, put prospects to sleep, and then feel fed up and stuck. So Tom helps transform content from boring to brilliant, turn marketing from frustrating to fun, and convert results from pitiful to profitable, which I'm sure many of us can do some help with from an entrepreneurial perspective, because we all have to go up that learning curve, don't we?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I'd love to know, Tom, what is it that you are passionate in life about right now?
Well, in the short term, I'm passionate about the fact that my 25-year-old son is going to be driving in from Colorado this week and visiting. So, family, just that's the most important thing for me, and that's the short term thing. On the long term, in terms of business, I'm passionate about the fact that I'm expanding my coaching program, which we call the Content Transformation Academy. That's designed to do all those things that you said: transform content from boring to brilliant, and the process from frustrating to fun. And we're taking steps right now to expand enrollment and to really take the program to a different level. So I'm very, very passionate and excited about that.
And I think it's so important because it's so easy to write blah 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 boring content
Oh yeah.
on social media and just not really, people just skip over it, and you don't attract people at any emotional level for them to want to continue reading it. And it's really a skill to learn how to tell a story in a way that makes people want to listen.
Yeah.
And I was
Go
just
ahead.
going to say, especially with social media expanding, we have this huge overload, don't we, of content. And so it's really important that your social media content actually attracts people to want to read more and doesn't put them off from the first sentence or two.
Yeah, very true. And it's about social media, it's about email, it's about your website content, your videos, any content that you're putting out there. And so many people soldier through. They think that they need to do it, and they're probably right that getting out there with good content is important. They think they need to do it. They kind of know that what they're putting out there is not exciting people and is sort of the same old blah 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 content, and so the process becomes a slog. It's not fun. You feel like you're in this maze, and it contributes to the sorts of things that you focus on in your work. It makes people feel less than. It makes people worry that they're imposters because nobody is responding to them. And the fact that you talked about it being a skill, it's learnable. So many people think that creating content, especially creative content, story powered content, is magic. You have to be a creative unicorn and tap some magic well of creativity. And I hear all the time from people, I'm not a creative person, Tom. But no, it's a skill. It's about systems, and it's about discovering what makes your prospects tick, building and assembling content in systematic ways. And these are skills that you can develop and learn and nurture. And a lot of the work that goes into this is stuff that can be delegated as well. I coach that you should probably be writing your own content, at least initially. But a lot of the work that goes into gathering the building blocks is stuff that you can easily delegate or at least share with others. And that makes the process so much more manageable and so much simpler.
And I think it's, coming back to the context of brain health,
Yeah.
is that it's really important that we equip ourselves with the right tools, because, in this digital world that we're now completely immersed in, and we're not really going to escape from unless we, disconnect from the internet, which obviously some people have to do.
Right.
It is to use it for us rather than against us, and to get joy from it in a way that isn't going to consume us and overwhelm us, which is what so many people find in the context of creating marketing information, and doing it in a way that it is inherent to your core values as well. Because I think certainly when I started, I found it really difficult to be me
Mm-hmm.
within the story.
Yeah.
And that, and then when you feel like you're not living into your core values and expressing the story in a way that feels congruent to who you are, then you kind of lose that nuance as well as to who, that uniqueness that makes you you. And
Yeah.
especially when it comes to things like video, as because it comes to telling your story on the screen as well as in emails, as you mentioned, it's easy for us to get into a massive fear state, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And just lock ourselves down,
Yeah.
and be fearful of just communicating initially, because communication doesn't mean people actually like what you do, but actually getting over that fear factor of communication, which then helps you build connection.
Yeah, absolutely. There were so many powerful things that you said there, and words that I'll pick up on. One was overwhelm, and
Mm.
in any product or service that we deliver, we are taking prospects or guiding our prospects and our clients on a journey from a before state to an after state. And I talk about uh, content creation, but the journey that my clients are going on is from a state of overwhelm to a state of relief, from a state
Mm.
of fear and lack of confidence. You talked about confidence
Mm.
before, from a state of fear and confidence to a state of clarity and or lack of confidence to a state of clarity and courage and confidence. And the thing that bridges those two states, that gets you from that before to after, are the skills
Mm-hmm.
and the techniques and tactics that enable you to make it easier to feel more confident, to get in front of a camera, to sit down in front of a computer and write an email with greater ease. But in the end, it's an emotional journey, which is when we met, we connected over the fact that in a strange way we're helping clients on similar journees, different paths to those
Yeah.
things, but they are definitely similar journeys.
Well, I mean, it's all about pain, isn't it? Your focus is on chaining the pain of people in the context of marketing, which can be
Hmm.
hugely painful and hugely stressful for an individual who has a unique skill set in a certain area of business,
Yeah.
but no skill set in the context of marketing. And there's this additional layer of expectation now on entrepreneurs and consultants and senior professionals
Yeah.
to get yourself out there in front of a camera on the digital platform, whereas previously we've had this ability to hide behind in a coffee shop, or to hide over a telephone, or it's been a very different dynamic of connecting to, in the traditional business sense of the word, before the web came into being, to where we are now. And it puts an awful lot of fear into people, and like you say, it's that journey, that getting people onto unchaining their pain. And I think it's really important, this topic, in the context of brain health, because we often think of brain health as mental health, and
Hmm.
it's totally not mental health. It's about getting the best out of your engine of life, which is your brain, mental health as a subset. And there's so many aspects that where we can feel less than. I know we talked about this at the beginning. We can feel less than because we don't necessarily have the right skills to maximize our brain's performance. And it's building that skill set in a way that is going to be fun in the process,
That's right.
and not painful.
Yeah, that and so many analogies. It's about recognizing that this is about establishing for brain health in your work, about establishing a skill set, about recognizing a current state, about aspiring to a better state, and about discovering the steps that you can take to make that journey. It different journeys that we're talking about, but fundamentally the same kind of path. And I'm well, I'll stop there.
That's
Yeah.
okay. So I'd love to know for you, in the context of your story that you're going to share, is what is optimal brain health mean for you personally? What does it mean? What would you say it is?
Yeah, I think it starts with pardon me. I think it starts with awareness.
Uh-huh.
And I'm reading right now for probably the third or fourth time a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Okay,
And
yeah.
it's an outstanding book about habit formation, and he makes the point that you can't break a bad habit unless you're aware of it,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't really establish a good habit also unless you're aware of the path that you wish to take. And I think that with brain health, um, so many people are are unaware are unaware that um, this is something they can work on and should
Mm,
work on, and that investing in it has benefits. So awareness is the first point, um, and then I guess the second thing I would say is that brain health means, to me, not being ashamed of the the moments where I'm not as strong, not feeling as good as I should, whether that's in terms of
mhm,
my confidence, my focus, whatever the case may be. It I I have a lot of people in my family who have had various struggles. Mental health, I understand, is a subset of this all, but
mhm,
I'll talk about mental health for a moment. People I'm very close to who have suffered from bipolar disorder,
mhm,
seasonal affective disorder, things
mhm,
like that. And and as I've watched those journeys, the metaphor is a pendulum in many cases, that you're swinging from a manic state to a depressed state, and that pendulum for somebody who's suffering from bipolar disorder is just a much wider swing. One of the
yeah,
things that I've come to recognize is that we all have the pendulum,
we all
and
do.
and it may not have quite as wide a swing, but we all have the pendulum. And so brain health to me is about being aware of the pendulum, and then having a tool set um, to to address whatever place you may be in that pendulum, combined with having a an ongoing practice, habits
Mm,
to bolster your brain health, and to not have that pendulum swinging outside your control. The
absolutely.
more that you focus on it, the more that you can sort of control when and how far that pendulum swings. So
do you know, I really love that analogy of a pendulum, because your pendulum can swing from a week to a day to an hour to the minutes, can't it?
it
Depending on
can
the
indeed.
circumstances that you're in and what's going on around you. And like you say, some people have a big swing of the pendulum, and that might be a very fast swing. Others may be a very slow swing, but we all move backwards and forwards in some way or another throughout our life, whether that's daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly.
Yeah.
And it's important to recognize when we're in the good side of the swing and to celebrate it, and when we're on the bad side of the swing, and to know how we can intervene to swing it back the other way.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right.
So I'd love to explore your story in the context of brain health. What was it that inspired you first to get into marketing itself? Where did it start?
Wow. Well, I've been a marketer for a long time. I worked for 10 years as a journalist, as a newspaper reporter, in the 90s, and in many ways, of course, I was a storyteller. That was
Yeah.
a business where I was um, meeting people, learning their story, sharing their story, trying to understand what was relevant and important to the audience with which I was connecting. And after spending 3 years at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, I live in St. Louis, Missouri, in the middle of the USA. 3 years on the internet side of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, I co-founded a startup. And that's when I really began my entrepreneurial journey and was responsible for helping to build this company. The two of us who founded it grew it from the two of us to 85 people in
Wow.
18 months. And it was a
That's really
fast ride.
fast.
And out of that, I became, fascinated about the different channels and how marketing had evolved. The newspaper industry was dying at that
Yeah.
time in the late 90s. The old display advertising models that were driving revenue for newspapers and for broadcast media were dying, and things were beginning to shift. And what the internet enabled was much more of a direct conversation between seller and buyer. And I became fascinated with the possibilities. And in 2001, I founded an email service provider company, the software that you use to manage and segment a list, create the email, send a bulk email, track results. And I ran that company for 19 years. And
Wow.
one of the things that happened while I was running that company was a lot of people would come to us and say, will you sell us a list now that we have your software? I said, no, we're not going to sell you a list. You can build a list. Well, what does that mean, build a list? And so we began to have a lot of conversations with companies about how to build a list, how to improve your website, how to do lead generation, all those marketing things. And so I wasn't just running a software company. It evolved into a marketing agency. And over the years, I began to recognize that more and more businesses, when they were struggling with their marketing, it wasn't a problem with the technology or the channel. A lot of people want to blame their email software or email in general. Email doesn't work. Social media doesn't work. But when that's going on, it's not the tool or the tactic or the channel. It 99% of the time is the content they're putting out, the same old blah 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 boring content. And so in 2019, I sold MarketVolt, the email marketing company, and hung my shingle as Story Power Marketing, and now I'm helping with that. So that's the journey into the long journey into marketing and where I am today.
And I know in your content you focus on the inner game, which is like mindset and brain health, and not just marketing strategies and tactics. Why is that for you so important? Why does it matter to your clients?
Well, I have a story about how I personally got to that, but I'll talk about my clients first for a second, because you mentioned a moment ago that we were talking about fear,
Yeah.
and oftentimes, most of the time, when we're selling a product or service, it doesn't matter whether it's a pack of chewing gum or whether it's brain health or whether it's marketing services. When we meet our prospects where they are, they're going to be in a state of frustration, fear, struggling, so on and so forth. And so you have to meet them where they are and reflect in your own content and marketing that state, but be very clear about the fact that there's a bridge to something to which they can aspire and get to the other side. And when I talk to a lot of coaches and consultants and experts about that, the response that I will often get is, "Oh, I don't want to do that. That's fear-based marketing. And I don't want to manipulate people." And then the conversation that we'll have is, well, it's not manipulation if or at least it's not unethical if you are providing a real solution. The difference between unethical manipulation and ethical persuasion is intent. If you intend to serve, then
And help people get to new state.
help people get to new state, then meeting them where they are, taking them by the hand and guiding them across the bridge is a valuable service, and persuading them to take that journey with you is a gift, not an act of unethical manipulation.
I just want to pause you there, because I think it's really important to really nail this for people.
Yeah.
Is that it's like you hire a guide to take you up a mountain. You want the guide to meet you where you are at, to take you up your mountain so you get to a higher level. If you hire a guide and then give them a different coordinate to where you are at, they're never going to take you there.
Exactly.
And you're never going to meet them. Because they're somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to meet people where they literally, physically
literally
meet
where
them,
they
and
are.
literally meet them where they're at.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you can't take them anywhere, because you'll never meet them.
and here's where the mindset piece for my own clients and prospects come in. I have that conversation, and rationally that makes all sorts of sense. Oh yes, that makes sense, Tom. If I'm providing a valuable product and service, then it's ethical, and I'm so on and so forth. And then I see it in their faces. If I'm providing a valuable product and service, and what I've come to recognize is that so many great coaches and consultants and experts who provide massive value to their clients are suffering from mindset issues, from brain health issues. They imposter syndrome, the perfection problem of procrastination, limiting beliefs, whatever paradigm you want to apply to it. They are stuck in their own self-doubt, their own pain, their own lack of belief, their own lack of confidence. And so when I launched this business, I began to share with my clients a variety of tools and tactics that I've been applying in my own life, recognizing that in order for you to really succeed and to carry forward, you have to be aware of the issues that you're struggling with. You have to recognize when the pendulum is swinging. You have to have a tool set to address it. And the thing that I say to my clients is that, look, I'm not the expert in how to do these things. Call Dr. Ruth or call somebody else if you really want to lean into it. But my recommendation is lean into it in some way. Get the tool set, study it. We people call me to diagnose and fix their content. People, my inbox right now is filled with people asking whether I want them to diagnose my search engine optimization and fix my searchability. We invest so much time and money in tools and tactics to fix our marketing, to learn time blocking and operational efficiency, to study management and get better as managers. And yet so many people are hesitant to invest in A, being aware, and then B, doing something about brain health, mindset. It might be mental health issues. And that hesitance is a shame. I have my own story regarding that.
I'd love you to share your story, because I know that you were resistant and hesitant initially, weren't you, in the context of personal development?
Very, very resistant. And and I'll share with you a story from just this past month, that even with my awareness and my buy-in to this work, I still suffer from some of the ghosts of that resistance. When we met, when you invited me in to be a guest on your podcast, I began to listen to your podcast, and I began to read the show notes, and you read the show notes about this guest who was a high level executive and then had this breakdown, and that guest who suffered from this thing, and there are a lot of really meaningful and powerful stories. And I realized that my initial reaction was to recoil a little bit and say to myself, well, I haven't had a breakdown. I'm not the right person for this conversation. And that's the old resistance thinking of feeling like this is a binary thing. You're sane or you're not sane. You've had a breakdown or you've not had a breakdown, which completely denies the idea that no, it's a continuum. We're all on this pendulum. It's not yes or no.
Which is often what we think of in mental health, right? Is mental health is I'm okay or I'm not okay.
Yeah, or brain health. My brain is healthy, or my brain is not healthy. What I've got my act together, or I don't have my act together. It's not a binary. The switch is on or the switch is off. But I absolutely operated from that mindset when I was young and more egotistical and so forth. And I had a mentor. This is back in the 90s. I had a mentor who encouraged me to do mindset work, and he was similar to how I am now with my clients. He wasn't prescribing a particular thing, but he was saying there are things that you can do, people you can read, the practices you can adopt, and I wanted nothing to do with it for two reasons. Number one, I was stuck in this notion that it's a binary. I'm not broken. Why should I do this? And to do this is an admission that I'm broken. So I was stuck in that thinking. And the other thing is I was influenced wrongly by a cultural phenomenon here in the United States, Saturday Night Live. There was a character played by Al Franken named Stuart Smalley. And Stuart Smalley was basically mocking life coaching, or at least bad life coaching. And Stuart Smalley was this pathetic character who would sit in front of a mirror and utter these cliched self-affirmations. And he was portrayed as this loser. And so when my mentor would talk about, maybe meditation, self-affirmation, things like this, I'd be like, I ain't doing that Stuart Smalley crap. And it really I don't want to blame Al Franken and Saturday Night Live or whatever for this, but
you labeled everything to Stuart Smalley.
yeah, and it was easy for me to do because I was already stuck in this other resistance, and I'm not broken, I'm not Stuart Smalley, and it really took me some time. Early 2000s, I guess, is when I began to adopt some of these practices much more diligently, and so it's been a 20 plus year journey for me to really um, understand and work on this, and it's a continuing journey. That's part of the lesson as well.
Yeah, you just triggered a memory of mine, actually. When I was first starting out as an entrepreneur myself, I remember flying to the States and talking to the chap on the plane. I've no idea what his name was, and we were talking about what my bit of my life story. And he said, "Oh, you need a life coach." And this was back in the early 2000s. I had no idea what a life coach was. I was like, "Oh, that sounds interesting," but really parked it, no idea what it meant at all in any way, shape, or form, and just went busy on my difficult entrepreneurial journey, trying to learn the ropes of being a new entrepreneur. And it wasn't until I hit a wall in business that I realized the importance of coaching. And I was in the not okay bracket. But my goodness, if I'd just listened earlier on, and not just to be okay, but to feel extraordinary, is what brain health is all about, is getting the best out of you,
Yeah.
and enjoying life and living it to its fullest in whatever way that looks like for yourself personally.
Yeah,
It would have been different.
yeah, and the way you just frame that, it's about a journey from good to great, great to greater, and so forth. We all have strengths, and it, the the problem with my resistance, my story, and so many others who still are stuck in this similar kind of resistance,
Yeah.
is that there's shame associated with this idea that you're surrendering, that you're admitting that you're broken, and there's, especially when it comes to mental health, shame associated with it. I love the fact that really just over the last several years, 4 or 5 years, you have people speaking much more openly
Yeah.
about their struggles, and um, and the shame associated with people who are in pain, people who are suffering from mental health issues and so forth, is beginning to subside,
Mm.
and and that's a good thing.
Mm. Yeah.
That's a really important thing,
Yeah.
and part of that comes from you having the kinds of conversations that you have on your podcast. So,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, and I
grateful.
think it's so important because, especially for entrepreneurs and consultants, there's been this history of, if you have a problem, mental health problem, then you're not eligible for funding. You're seen in the at-risk
Yeah,
category because you're categorized as not okay versus the okay bracket of people. But
yeah,
like you say, we're all on a pendulum, we're all on a spectrum.
yep,
And you could be okay one day and not okay the next, or okay 1 minute and not okay the next. It's everything swings, doesn't it?
yeah,
And you can't call that you're going to be okay forever, based on where you are at now, because the pendulum will always move.
yeah, and when we're operating in systems where you get penalized
Yeah.
for bringing this forward and working on it, when there's shame associated with it, then you have people who get stuck in that resistance, who don't step forward and do the work that they could benefit from. And
Mm.
then when the pendulum swings beyond a breaking point, the outcomes are probably much worse than
Absolutely, because they don't have
they
the
would have,
tools.
yeah, than they would have been. So
Yeah.
um, talking about this openly is so critical. And as I said, I'm grateful that you're having these conversations
No,
and
you're most
helping
welcome.
people work on this.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about the pain that people experience from a marketing perspective. I know we've touched on it a bit, but you work with many coaches and consultants, other experts who have this pain that they need to unchain with regards to marketing.
Yeah.
What are the the typical pains that people experience?
Well, probably the most typical pain is writer's block or some sense of feeling stuck. And so many people will commit to the idea of creating content, social media content, emails. I'm gonna send an email every week or multiple emails a week because my marketing coach told me I should do it. That's the formula. And then they sit down in front of a computer and they may have listened to someone like me and say, oh, make it story powered content. The more it's driven by story, and so they'll sit down in front of the screen and it'll be once upon a time, now what? They're stuck.
Yeah.
They don't know what to write. They don't know where to turn. And and then I've had people describe this to me as I have panic attacks when I sit down to write an email because I
Yeah.
feel like I have to do it. It's not going to go away. And I'm stuck. And all of these emotions. I'm not good at this. I don't know
Mm,
what I'm doing. This is fruitless. My business isn't going anywhere. All of this stuff can manifest just around the act of creating a simple piece of content, and it's painful. And
yeah.
so that is the most common thing that I hear from all of my prospects and clients, and the thing that I try to coach them
Hmm.
past, um, by helping them recognize that no, there are systematic ways to attack this and to overcome this.
Mm. And it's almost as if people go into a freeze state, rather
Absolutely.
than run towards the threat, which some people do, in a defensive rage kind of reaction, they
Yep.
just go for it. Is
Yep.
often people just freeze
They
because
they
of the fear factor, and it activates their amygdala. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. They freeze on both ends of the process. So I was talking about, writer's block, blank page, but then a lot of them will soldier through and even adopt a lot of the skills and know-how to get to an almost finished product, what they think is an almost finished product, and they freeze on the back end of the process.
Yeah.
Fear factor. They are afraid to release their work. I tell a story about Leonardo da Vinci, and Leonardo was commissioned by monks in some Italian town to do a big painting of the Adoration of the Magi, back in whatever century that was. And he made this painting, and got it finished almost. And then he kept tinkering with it. He didn't release his work. And the monks got so fed up that they went and hired this other guy. And the other guy did the painting, and it's finished and it's hanging wherever wherever they hung it. And art historians compare Leonardo's unfinished work to this guy's finished work, and they all say Leonardo's work is a masterpiece. This other guy's work is good, but not a masterpiece. And but the moral of the story is, that guy finished the work and got paid, and Leonardo didn't. And the perfection problem
Yeah.
is a real thing for a lot of content creators. They won't release their work because they fear, how will people respond? Is
Hmm.
it's not good enough? Oh, give
They
yourself
can't
permit.
respond if you don't release it.
Exactly. Exactly. Give yourself permission to release your work.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of brain health and pain rooted in the things that are creating that resistance. So getting stuck at both ends of the process is something I see a lot. And
Yeah.
again, it's about that journey from a lack of confidence and fear to clarity and confidence and courage and so forth. There,
Yeah.
you can take that journey.
Yeah. Do you know, I've been one that's got stuck in this position myself personally in terms of releasing content. And one of the worst things I ever did was compare my content to somebody else's,
Oh
and
yeah,
then try
yeah,
and reproduce the unimportant content that would make it brilliant or better, and not actually produce the core content that would have made it good. And then I could have added it in later. And so it got delayed and delayed and delayed.
yeah,
But I know when I've done content that I've forced myself to release it by actually releasing the first drip feeding release. So you have to make the next piece
yep,
after that, then it gets done. It might not be perfect, but you refresh it because it's out there
yeah,
when you need to. Once you get the feedback, it's so easy to fall into that first trap of comparing and then saying to yourself, well, this is not enough.
yeah,
I need to be like this person who's up here on a pedestal and I'm down here, so I need to, but ultimately you have to climb this ladder to get to that height, and you can't just do it in one big leap. So you
yeah,
have
and
to be prepared to do that work and keep doing it.
exactly. And what you're describing is about habit formation.
Yeah.
So getting in that habit of just doing the work and releasing the work is um, it is a skill. There are steps to take in habit formation. If you've not read Atomic Habits, I recommend it. It's a great
Yeah.
book. And this idea of comparing yourself to others, I know a coach, high-end executive coach, works with individuals, works with teams, is really brilliant and runs a 7-figure business. And this guy was constantly getting stuck comparing himself to Tony Robbins. All mad, I would hear him talk about the fact that, oh, Tony Robbins said this in an email and that's wrong, and I can't believe that guy is making all this money and blah blah blah. It's like, dude, you are running a great business and you are helping all sorts of people, and you don't need to frame up your whole sense of identity in comparison to this guy you have no control over, and
Yeah.
no control over his audience. And
Yeah.
we do it all the time. I mean,
Absolutely, and it's the thief of joy, they say, isn't it? Comparison is the thief of joy. Is it?
yeah,
Not only you're trying to be someone you're not, because you're never going to be someone else, but you're forgetting to be who you are from a uniqueness perspective, and taking away
exactly.
your personal power by not being just you,
Yeah,
which
precisely.
is so important. I'd love to dive into the fun facts before we transition back to brain health in the context of marketing. So this is the 5 pillars of brain health, remembered by the mnemonic FACTS, which stands for feelings, actions, connections, thoughts, and surroundings. So first one, feelings for you. What's the funniest or most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you?
It's funny that you asked that question, because I don't know when this episode will be published, but we are recording this episode the first week of May. It's what,
We
May
are, yeah.
3rd? Yeah. And so Thursday is May 5th.
Fifth.
And I have a resistance around foreign languages. Uh, and so it was Cinco de Mayo. I was younger, in my 30s. We were out at a bar enjoying Cinco de Mayo, and it happened to be on a Friday. And um, and I said something to the effect, to a big group of people. We had 10 people around a table, margaritas, the whole bit. And I turned to the whole group and it was silent. Everybody heard me. I said something to the effect of, Yeah, we should go and have get together for Cinco de Mayo every year. And somebody made the comment, well, yeah, it helps that it's a Friday. And I said, yeah, it's on the first Friday every month, isn't it? And somebody said, no, it's on the 5th of May every year. I said, the 5th of May. And so for those of you who don't know Spanish, Cinco de Mayo, 5th of May. And it's one of those tiny little embarrassments that I didn't realize. I just thought Cinco de Mayo was the first Friday of May every year, not on the 5th of May every year. Totally small thing, but it was an embarrassment that I carry with me for 25 years. Every year
Wow.
when Cinco de Mayo comes, I remember that time where I, idiot Tom, not knowing his Spanish, had no clue what Cinco de Mayo meant. So that's
Well, I don't think you'd be alone on that. I
yeah,
don't think very many people would connect
yeah.
connect it. So I'm sure you're not alone in that boat.
Yeah, so those of you listening, if that's now news to you that Cinco de Mayo is the 5th of May, I didn't mean to call you an idiot. I'm sorry.
Well, I think, from a language perspective, it's very easy for us to not pick up on those nuances, isn't it?
Yeah,
And because it's not if it's not your first language, why would you think it actually means something if you don't speak Spanish?
yeah, it's true.
You
Yeah,
you wouldn't know, would you?
but there is a interesting lesson in that rationally it's like, oh, okay, I didn't know what 5th of May meant. Emotionally, it's like a trigger. Every year, the first week of May,
Yeah,
that memory comes back, and I feel a little sting of the embarrassment and the pain, and a small thing, but it's funny what things you remember and how embarrassment can linger even decades later.
absolutely. And there's a good connection there between our mental state, is our
Hmm.
knowledge gap, and our emotional state, and how a gap in knowledge can trigger huge emotional feelings,
Yeah.
because ultimately you weren't enough
Hmm.
in the context of knowledge, because you didn't have that knowledge at the time, and
Yep.
then that made you feel less than.
Exactly. And we spoke about awareness earlier, and the awareness comes in because you can, when you're aware, you can at least say, oh, wait a minute, this embarrassment, that's silly. And you can shift out of that emotional pained state and get back to recognizing rationally, it's perfectly understandable that I wouldn't know what Cinco de Mayo means.
Yeah,
And yet those emotions will bubble up and take control. But being able to set it aside, being able to recognize it, being able to use tools to to recognize the pain and as I said, set it aside,
yeah.
are that's I've not always been there.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's that recognition piece, that awareness piece is really hugely important, because you're then activating your prefrontal cortex,
Hmm.
which is your logical thinking part of your brain.
Yep.
And by taking that time to be aware of what you're feeling emotionally,
Hmm.
you are taking back control of your emotional brain by activating the thinking part. And
Yep.
that's so important, because then you take back the power of the emotion and you can leverage it to best effect. But if you're not aware of the emotions that are running in the background, and you don't take that time to be aware, then they will run in the background like an operating, a program
Right.
within your operating system that is slowing things down, rather than knowing it's running and speeding it up, or just turning it off.
Yeah. Yeah.
So really important. Right, great. Thank you for sharing that. That's a really good one. Actions. What's the most exciting thing you've ever done?
Well, probably jumping from an airplane at 15,000 feet. That was pretty good. Did that in New Zealand a few years ago. I was there with my children. I'm the father of twins, and
Oh,
my daughter Maddie asked before we went whether we were going to do some of that New Zealand adventure stuff. And she suggested bungee jumping. I said no to bungee jumping. I don't like the idea of, whatever it might
yeah,
do to
it's
my
not
neck
good for
and
your
spine.
brain.
But then she said, how about skydiving? And I, without hesitation, said yes. She was surprised. She thought that bungee jumping was the compromise, and that skydiving was going to be the hard one to convince me to do. But no, I did it, and I would do it again. It was an absolute joy. It was a tandem jump, so
Tandem, yeah.
I had an expert, sort of hanging on to me and
Yeah.
controlling the levers. I have a I'm not afraid of the idea of doing solo. I just have to invest much more
Yeah.
time and training and preparation to do
Yeah.
it. But I loved that experience.
Yeah, I love jumping out of the aeroplane. Actually, I've done jumping out of an not skydiving, but jumping out of an aeroplane myself a few times.
I
Um,
misspoke then. If you're making a distinction between skydiving and jumping out of an airplane, this was jumping out of an airplane. So
oh, okay. So it
what
was
is skydiving compared to? Is
so
that jumping off a
skydiving at
cliff?
15,000 feet is skydiving typically, isn't it? Did
Well,
you
yeah.
did
So
you did you
I
did you?
jumped out of an airplane at 15,000 feet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Well, I thought it was brilliantly exciting. And the
yeah.
bit that I found not so exciting from an adrenaline rush, because I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie, was when the parachute opened.
Yeah, it gets
Because it's so much slower than the actual free fall bit you do initially.
yeah, yeah. Now, eh, I agree. It slowed down now. I don't know where you've done it, but we were over the town of Wanaka
Uh-huh.
in on the South Island of New Zealand, which is uh, um, oh, I think one of the questions you might ask me is the most beautiful place
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
ever
yeah.
been.
Let's
I'll
go there.
I'll answer that now. The South Island of New Zealand. So, um, floating through the air on a cloudless day over Wanaka, South Island, New Zealand,
Wow.
um, was one of the most spectacular
Yeah, I can
things I've ever
imagine.
seen. That is a beautiful, beautiful corner of the planet.
Yeah, ours was over a very cloudy southern England, so
Ah,
although it's nice, I can't imagine it quite compares.
yeah, yeah.
So thoughts, let's crack on to thoughts. What stupid or crazy thought have you often told yourself in the past that isn't true?
Wow. You know, I have I've suffered from imposter syndrome. I've
Uh-huh.
told myself that I don't deserve to be here. I'm not good enough. Um, uh, I'm gonna be found out. It's been a long time since I was stuck in that sort of uh, emotion, but uh, one of the things that I've come to recognize also is that those emotions, just like that Cinco de Mayo thing, they can come and visit you um, from time to time, and even when you're uh, in a great state of flow and achieving at a high level and at a rational level, very clear on the value that you bring, every once in a while those thoughts can creep into your mind. I'm much
Yeah.
more skilled at recognizing that that's BS
Yeah.
and setting them aside. But to my point, and really the whole theme of this conversation, I'm much more skilled at that because I put in the work to get skilled at that.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you know recognizing those thoughts and that imposter syndrome, and we call it automatic negative thoughts, it really is a skill, and it's something that we don't get taught when we're young. We have to learn it often the hard way, or we don't learn it at all. And those thoughts can really steal our mind and steal progress. And it's like learning to ride a bike is you have to practice at recognizing those thoughts in order to squash the ones that aren't true.
Yep.
And take back control and get that pendulum back swinging the way you want it to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you. And when I'd love to know, did you have those thoughts when you were growing your business as well? And you know, the imposter syndrome.
Well, I had those thoughts, 20 years ago when I was starting the email marketing company and kind of building an agency around it. Those thoughts would bubble up more frequently. By the time I sold that business and started Story Power Marketing, I was fully confident in the work that I do and the value that I bring, in part because I had a significant track record. One piece of context, that business I was referring to earlier, that we grew from 2 to 85 people so quickly, we raised a lot of venture capital. We were growing the thing, and it was on the right trajectory. But this was the first great .com wave. We're talking 1999 into 2000, and here in the States, and I think worldwide, a lot of money came into the startup community, and then when the bubble burst, a lot of money was pulled out of the startup community, and there wasn't great discrimination both on the inflow and the outflow between companies that were good and companies that were bad. There was just a lot of movement of money, and so we lost some funding we were expecting, and we had to sell the company, and it didn't work out for investors. So I had been in a position where I had to lay off people. It was a massive blow to our egos and our reputation as business people, and that was the context in which I was starting the business. And so in reflecting on that, I can understand why, as I was beginning to grow the next business, I had more frequent crises of confidence than I have now.
Yeah, and that's really understandable as well, isn't it? Because you've got those experiences that weren't necessarily as ones that served you, and if you didn't have the right tool set to say no, it was, this was not my fault. This was not on me. This was the just the consequences of the .com crash.
Yeah,
it's hard to disentangle the two, isn't it?
Yeah, and it was a journey not only to discover that this was not my fault, but to discover that this was no one's fault, because I was stuck in anger and finger pointing as well, for a couple of years, at least 2-3 years after it happened, and I came to recognize that. I came to recognize really as I began to do the work that I described, that wait a minute, that is, first of all, it's false. Second of all, those are emotions that are actually holding me back, that are interfering with my own progress. And so.
And we can self-sabotage ourselves so easily, can't we? Is we may get hurt by someone or something once, but we play it in our minds thousands of times, and that really, really hinders us.
Yeah.
Tom, what one piece, this show is all about brain health and unchaining your pain. What one piece of advice would you give to anyone who is in a kind of imposter syndrome? They're having that mental block from a marketing perspective. Maybe they feel overwhelmed with just getting started, and they've got this blank sheet of paper and they don't feel they're able to make progress. What one piece of advice would you give to anyone who's in that position?
Well, I'd give a piece of advice that has a few parts. I guess the headline for the advice would be begin to embrace the work. And in order to begin to embrace the work, um, um, set aside the shame and openly share with others that you're looking for help. Get
Mm,
advice from people you trust about places to turn, people who might recommend Dr. Ruth, people who might recommend some other resource or tool. My mentor was putting me on a great track, and for a while, I was completely resistant, holding him back, telling him, no, no way. Go and find somebody who can guide you to the resources. And before you invest in another tool to help you become a better marketer or a more productive person or whatever it may be, begin to invest in tools and resources that can help you um, recognize, become more aware, and develop tool sets to assist you with your brain health and your mindset. And if mental health is part of the equation, your mental health.
no, thank you. That's great advice, because I think we do so often spend our time investing in the tools to get us from A to B, but actually don't look at how well our engine is working in
That's
the
right.
context of a
And
car.
then when we don't get to A to B, we say that tool didn't work, when in fact it was the engine that we were trying to operate that tool with that didn't work.
Yeah, was
Yeah.
broken a little bit, or
Yeah.
not optimal,
Not
depending on how
optimal.
fast
Right.
you want to get there.
Yeah, exactly.
Tom, it's been an absolutely fascinating conversation, all in the context of brain health, and I've really loved it. How can people get hold of you to find out more about what you do and how you can help them?
Yeah, the best thing they can do is go to my website, storypowermarketing.com, storypowermarketing, all one word, .com. And I would encourage you when you get there to sign up for the email list. A little overlay page will pop up, and you can join the email list. And that's where I share ideas and tips that are not just informative but entertaining. And if you join the list, you'll get all the information that you need to carry forward with me and learn more.
And they certainly are. I love your email content, and I love reading it. So I would encourage people to sign up and learn more about what Tom does. Tom, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for joining me on my show, Brain Health, Unchaining Your Pain, and really sharing your story in how you can help others unchain their pain.
Thank you, Ruth. I had a blast.
And remember, everyone, you're not stuck with the brain you have. You have the power to make it better. And this show is here to really show you how.
This broadcast is brought to you by WINJECT Studios. We are an all-in-one educational platform for podcasters that revolutionizes how hosts leverage content to increase engagement with listeners, downloads, and income. We come together to focus on community, collaboration, and collective impact. For more information on how you can interact directly with our hosts, access exclusive live content with offers you can't get anywhere else from our official partners, join our purpose-driven community by visiting www.winject.com. If you're ready to build a career doing what you love, then we're ready to see you there.